All right, so I wanted to arrange this video to kind of give you a breakdown and a best practices type video on preparation for the AP exam. Okay, so we'll start off with what your exam is going to entail. Okay, so your AP exam that we take in May, remember, May 6th, is going to be divided into 4 parts. It's usually around this number in terms of questions and stuff. Sometimes it changes just a little bit year to year. They remade the exam about 5 years ago and have tweaked it a little bit since then. But the last couple of years it's been about the same, except of course for this year because of the COVID. But whatever. Anyway, so your first part of the exam is going to be multiple choice. 55 questions in 55 minutes. It represents 40% of the total grade. So this is the biggest single part of the exam and the most important. That's why when we have tests in here, typically we do a lot of multiple choice. I want you to see a lot of questions this year. I want you to experience a lot of questions and styles of question this year. Okay. Second section you do is a short answer section of the test. Okay. You have 50 minutes to do that, and basically, you have to answer 3 of 4 questions. You have about 50 minutes total to do this. Sometimes they change the time up to about 45 minutes, but we'll say about 50 minutes. Basically, there's 4 questions there. They all deal with different things. You have to answer question 1. You have to answer question 2. And then you choose between questions 3 and 4 of which one. But you can't do like 1, 3, and 4 or 2, 3, and 4. You have to do 1, you have to do 2, and then you do 3 or 4. And that represents 20% of your total grade. Okay. Then you have the document-based question, the DBQ. Okay, it's one question that you ultimately have almost an hour to do, 55 minutes roughly. Sometimes they trim the writing down to 35 minutes, so it's 50 minutes total. But it represents 25% of your total grade, so that's the second biggest part of the test. It's a document-based question. You're going to get a question that's going to have 6 or 7 documents with it. And the goal is to write an essay and integrate the documents into the essay. Okay, a lot of people get tripped up with this, and we'll be working on them here before too long to show you how they go. But basically, a DBQ is you'll read a question, you'll get a bunch of documents, you'll study the documents, and then you'll write an essay. And you'll use the documents in your essay to support whatever your thesis is, to support the point you're trying to make. Okay? You don't get a choice on questions here. It's one question. Okay? And 15 minutes to do it. It seems pretty daunting and scary, but it's usually not as bad as it looks, because one fortunate thing about the DBQ is the documents, when you read over them, it kind of reminds you of things. So it's really just a matter of integrating the documents effectively to answer the question and make your point. Okay, and then finally, the last part of the exam is the free response question. Okay, you have 35 minutes to do it, and it represents only 15% of your total grade, so it's the smallest portion. Basically, they have 3 different questions, choices A, B, and C. You do 1 of the 3 questions. No more, no less. You have to do 1 of the 3 questions. Each one usually deals with kind of like a different time period in American history, so chances are at least 1 out of those 3 you should be able to construct a good response for. So that is what the AP exam looks like. So we'll move on. I should probably take those out. Whatever. So here are some basic frequently asked questions or goals or best practices when taking the multiple choice test, which of course we'll be doing the first one on Friday. Okay, time is important here. You saw 55 questions in 55 minutes. All the questions are based off prompts. Okay, so you also need to add in some time there to read the prompt before you go into answering your question. So don't dwell on questions for too long. You look at one, if you know the answer it, move on to the next question. Okay? It's better to answer all of them than to leave some blank. So you want to try to finish the test. Okay? So if you know the answer, immediately pick the right answer, move on. Okay? So the strategies I'm going to give you are kind of strategies for things where you don't know, kind of strategies for things where you don't know the right answer to a question. And basically, there's three types of questions that you're going to see on multiple choice questions on the exam. There's easy, there's medium, and there's hard questions. And probably there's most out of 55, you'll have about 15 easy questions, 15 hard questions, and the other, what would that be, 25 are going to be medium questions, okay? So rule number 2 here, right? Once you're done with a question, this goes with this here. Once you're done with a question, you're done with it, okay? Once you've answered it, it ceases to exist. Do not go back and change answers. A lot of studies show, and I'm sure you've heard this from other teachers, the more you think about it and the more people change answers that they've already chosen, 60-80% of the time they're wrong. You're either second guessing yourself and moving away from the right answer, or you really just don't know and you're guessing anyway and wasting time on a question that you don't know and not giving enough time to the questions that you will know the answers to. So moving on. Okay. All right. So if you do not know the right answer, then you eliminate any answers you know are wrong and guess from the remainder. You need to answer all 55 questions. It's important that you completely finish the test. Right? So, yeah, that's really annoying. I got to figure out a way to get that. I don't even know why I put that in there. Anyway, the thing that makes these questions hard, okay, are the answer choices. Easy, medium, or hard, okay? And an easy question, the answer choices are fairly obvious, so the right answer isn't hard to find. And then it gets progressively harder as you go. It's not so much necessarily that the questions are hard, but one thing about AP questions, AP multiple choice questions, is, you're not always necessarily looking for the sole right answer. You're looking for the most correct answer. So in other words, sometimes there'll be questions where, it sounds like multiple answers are correct. Okay, and they might be, but you have to find the one that's most correct. This isn't math where 2 + 2 always equals 4. There's that wiggle room in there. And you might be saying to yourself, Mr. Schuster, that's not fair. That's not right. Well, I make your tests like this so when you take the AP exam, you've seen it before and you've been prepared. Okay, so I don't want to hear that question's right too. No, there might be questions on there where there's multiple right answers. Okay. And I'm not trying to throw you off. I'm trying to prepare you, okay? And it's not going to be blatant or anything like that. But you know what? There might be a couple questions on the test Friday where, a couple of the answers might be a little right, but you got to pick the one that's the most correct, okay? Let's do one as an example, right? What's the capital of Sudan? Well, we may not know what the capital of Sudan is, but we know, hopefully, that it's not Washington, D.C. We know that it's not London. We know that it's not Rome. And we know that it's not Moscow. We should know, then, that has to be the right answer. See, you might not even know what the capital of Sudan is, but you do know that it's not this, or this. That's a way to answer an easy question. Let's try another one. So, what's the capital of Zimbabwe? Any guesses? Somebody? Ashley, want to do the flag? That's really not necessary right now, but whatever. This one's a little bit tougher. Can we eliminate any choices? Pause it for a second if you want and try to answer as the class. If not, we'll just go ahead and go through this, right? So the capital is Zimbabwe. Well, we might not know again what the capital is, but we know it's not Dayton, so we can eliminate that. We know it's not Paris, so we can eliminate that. That leaves us 3 choices: Harar, Abuja, and Casablanca. So, how many say Harar? Don't look on your computers to try to look it up on Wikipedia or something. How many say Harar? How many say Abuja? How many say Casablanca? Okay, so we could probably eliminate Casablanca because we should at least know that that just doesn't sound like it. Your correct answer, the capital of Zimbabwe, is Harare. Okay, let's try a hard one with more African capitals. See, I told you those African capitals would come in handy after Honors World Studies freshman year, right? Here you go. So, what is the capital of Angola? This one's harder. Why? Because they're all African. They're all African places, right? So, what's the capital of Angola? Take a look at it for a second. Are there any ones here that we can eliminate? Yeah, Preston? I'm sorry, I'm just guessing that you might know one. I don't know, whatever. Well, we can eliminate maybe, do we want to eliminate Casablanca because we just don't think it's that, and plus it's Morocco, and that's not even a capital anyway. Hopefully we know that we can eliminate Cairo, Egypt. Maybe we didn't know that. So that leaves us 3 choices. Now, say we know our African capitals. We got 2 on here, 2 choices on here that sound similar. So now maybe we're picking between those. I don't know. Maybe you don't know that the capital of Kenya is Nairobi, so that one's eliminated. See, where the AP tries to throw you off is it gives you 2 choices of things that are fairly similar. Okay? And we have 2 L capitals, so we have to choose between those. So even if we remember and know our African capitals from freshman year, we could still get tripped up here. So how many say Lusaka? How many say Luanda? All right. The capital of Angola is Luanda. All right. So there you go. This is what I like to call kind of the average student rules. And not to say that any of you are average, but the typical AP student kind of does some of these following things in preparation and on AP tests. So let's take a look at what some of these things are. And these are generally things you shouldn't do. All right. Rule number 1 is the average student believes that what is true today has always been true. Not necessarily the case. History changes over time. So if something is the way it is now, maybe it wasn't that way 250 years ago, or 200 years ago, or 100 years ago, or whenever. Don't assume that something that's true today has always been that way. Okay. Number 2, if a question mentions a subject or time period by name, the question must be about that subject or time period. That is not necessarily true either. Be careful with this, especially on some of the prompts. The prompts many times that you'll see on questions where there's a prompt and then a few questions afterward. Sometimes they have a lot of clues in them if you look at when the prompt was written or something like that. But a lot of times these were written by historians much, much later, reflecting back on a time that happened before. So be very careful. Yes, a lot of times it is going to be about that subject or that time period, but that's not necessarily the case. So read carefully, take your time, and be careful with those sorts of things. I really got to turn off that drum roll. Okay. So a student will always pick an answer choice that agrees with something you know about a topic, even if it is not correct. Okay. Again, I know this about a particular topic, right? I know that the, spoiler alert, North won the Civil War. Okay. So that must mean that their military was far superior to the military of the South. That's just not necessarily true. In fact, the South had much better military leaders, generals, and things like that, and it's lack of money and lack of manpower ultimately that cost the South the war, more so than military superiority or superior tactics and skills of the North. Another big mistake people make is they always pick a familiar name. Just because it's a name you know does not mean that it's the right answer. Okay? So be very careful about that. Just because you know the name and you say, well, I've heard Abraham Lincoln before and his question's from the 1850s, and it's about abolition, so it must be him. No, that's not necessarily the case. Try to eliminate wrong choices. Most of these questions on here have 5 choices. On your AP exam, you'll have 4 choices. If you can eliminate one choice, you've increased your chances of getting it right from 25% to 33% on a guess. If you can eliminate 2 of 4 choices, you move yourself to a 50-50 shot of getting it right on a guess. If you've eliminated 3 of the choices, you know are wrong, even though you may not know that the 4th choice is right, if you know the other 3 are wrong, you're guaranteed to get it right then, right? So, don't always rely on the things that you think you know. Students always stay away from answers that are unfamiliar. Just because it's something that doesn't sound familiar doesn't mean that it's not the right answer. One thing I want to work on, we'll do later this year. AP loves to throw terms, and that's why I give you a lot of words that mean the same thing. Like we were talking about French and Indian War, 7 Years' War, Great War for the Empire, manumission, what that means, right? The AP loves to put flowery wording on an answer choice to try to throw you off the scent of the answer, if that makes sense. When you look at an answer choice and you're not sure what it means, try to rearrange the words a little bit or rearrange it to make something that makes a little bit more sense to you. If you're able to do that, then you should be able to break down a question effectively and answer it well. Hopefully. Also, you always got to be aware of time. Wear a watch. Well, not an Apple Watch because that would be cheating. But just be aware of time. Look at the clock. Be aware of time around you. And make sure you budget that time effectively when taking the test, right? We've been talking about cause and effect. Cause and effect is big on the AP exam. Causation, one of the big things we've been talking about all semester. Why things are important. Why event A leads to event B, so on and so forth. Make sure you always think of that cause and effect. So, let's take a look at a question relating to... Okay, so here's a question. In 1890, the most important source of revenue for the federal government was... Any of these choices we can eliminate. They all probably sound a little unfamiliar. Take a look at the time, 1890. Any of these we can eliminate. Well, today, the most important source of money for the government is income tax. So if you really think about it, you know that's probably not the answer. But if this wasn't up here, you would say it's income tax, which would make you wrong. So, your next guess is, well, Americans really aren't that big of drunks. Maybe they are, but whatever. So liquor taxes might not be the choice. Inheritance taxes, maybe you can eliminate that too. It leaves you 2. It leaves you with customs duties and sales tax. And I'm going to guess that your inclination is that the correct answer is sales tax. Well, you're wrong. The correct answer is customs duties. Throwing you off with terms you might not be as familiar with. But before we had income taxes in 1913, customs duties was the #1 source of revenue for the federal government. Customs duties are also known as tariffs. Okay? See what we did there? I changed the word around to make more sense here. I eliminated a couple choices. I left it to a couple additional ones, and I got it right. And it also helped that, I teach the class and I know the answers anyway. So, let's take a look at another question. The goal of the American Colonization Society was to, well, gosh, Mr. Schuster, I don't even know what the American Colonization Society is. Well, that's all right, because we'll learn about it in Chapter 10. So, what was the goal of the American Colonization Society? Okay, well, let's see. Even if I have no idea what this is. American Colonization Society. So, colonize America. American colonization. Okay. Which one sounds wrong? Well, assimilate recent immigrants into American society. That doesn't sound like we're colonizing, so maybe we eliminate that. Any guesses, by the way, while we're out there? Okay. Okay. Promote westward expansion by funding internal improvements. Infrastructure, that doesn't seem to make as much sense because we're not colonizing America because we already have it, so we can eliminate E. So that leaves us with D, B, and A. Okay. So I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking that most of you probably are thinking that the correct answer is D. Well, let me ask you this. It sounds rightish, unless you know what the American Colonization Society was. It sounds rightish, but how many overseas colonies do you remember in all you've learned about the history of America? How many overseas colonies did the United States have? Not too many. Hawaii, some in the South Pacific, the Philippines, and Guam for a while. That's really about it. So, if there's not much of it, then we can maybe eliminate this too. And your correct answer here, folks, is actually A, return freed slaves to Africa. So that's a tough one because we haven't talked about this yet. But again, process of elimination hopefully helps you get it closer to right. We'll do a couple more here, and this has run a little bit longer than I thought, so we'll just keep trying a few more questions. Student will always pick an answer choice that agrees with something he knows about a topic, even if it is not correct. So the majority of white families in antebellum South owned. The student will always pick an answer choice that agrees with something he knows about a topic, even if it is not correct. The majority of white families in the antebellum South, by the way, antebellum means pre-Civil War, South owned. Well, boy, we know a lot of people owned a lot of slaves, so is it A, more than 100? Got to be careful with the wording. Majority. Majority of white families in the South owned. How many? So I'm guessing you're going to do one of two things here. Not going to pick this because it sounds like a lot. This sounds like a lot too. This doesn't sound like enough, so it leaves you with C and E. 10 to 50 sounds like a roundish number, so that's good. But in that case, you'd be wrong. The majority of people owned no slaves in the South during the antebellum period before the end of slavery. Okay? Remember, look for key words like majority or always or oft or most of the time. Things that are absolutes like that. If it said the typical slave owner in the South owned how many slaves, then yeah, then you'd be talking about one of these numbers as the answer. But we're talking about the majority of the population. And the majority of people in the South are regular everyday folks, just like they are today, and they don't own any slaves. So let's try another one. It's kind of an easy question, but it's really not easy because we haven't talked about any of this stuff yet. So anyway, which of the following did not occur during the presidency of Andrew Jackson? Well, even before, well, which one do we know occurred during the presidency of Jackson? Removal of the Cherokee, which of course we know as the Trail of Tears. So we should know that already. You probably haven't heard of the destruction of the Second Bank, the nullification crisis, or the Eaton affair. But if you had, because we would have already learned about Andrew Jackson, you can eliminate all three of those. So even if you don't know about the Lowell Mill strikes, you would know that that is the correct answer. Maybe. So if you got that one right, good work. And try another one. We did that already. We're going to move on. Rules 3 and 5. Okay. The student will always pick the answer choice that agrees with something you know about a topic. The student will always stay away from answers that are unfamiliar. The Jefferson administration advocated which of the following changes as a means of restoring Republican ideals? Yeah, we're not ready for this one. Well, you know what? Why don't you give it a shot? I'll give you a couple seconds. Take a look at it. The Jefferson administration advocated which of the following changes as a means of restoring Republican ideals? Abolishing the Bank of the United States, reducing the scope and activities of the federal government, discontinuing funding state debts, adopting Kentucky and Virginia resolutions at the national level, increasing the size of the U.S. military. So, this is a hard question. So what you need to know to answer this one is know a little bit about Democratic Republicans or Jeffersonian Republicans. And we know that Jeffersonian Republicans support Southern ideologies and therefore would support adopting the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions, or would not support that. They also, Jefferson was also not very pro-military. He believed in a small military, so that one's out. He also believed, surprisingly to many people, in funding state debt is a good thing, and he was not for abolishing the banks. So we've eliminated 4 choices, and that leaves us with 1, because we should know maybe from last year in Clough Daddy's class that anti-federalists believe in a smaller government. See that connection there? Hopefully you remember about Jefferson was an anti-federalist, believed in smaller government. Therefore, reducing the scope of activities of the government would be something that Thomas Jefferson, would probably support. Okay. That was a dumb question because we haven't looked at any of that stuff yet, but here's another one. So this will be our last one. So, let Southern oppressors tremble. I shall strenuously contend for immediate enfranchisement. I will be as harsh as truth and uncompromising as justice. The author of the following statement was, always go for the name that you heard. Okay? So I'm assuming most of you have heard of Abraham Lincoln, maybe Henry Clay, maybe John C. Calhoun. Okay? Well, first of all, what is this about? Let Southern oppressors tremble. So we're saying, oh, this guy must be from the North. If you know anything about John C. Calhoun, which you probably don't yet, you know he's not from the North, so he can be out. We also know that Henry Clay is not from the North. He's from Kentucky, so he can be removed. I shall contend for immediate enfranchisement. Enfranchisement means freedom. We're getting closer. I'll be harsh as truth and uncompromising as justice. Okay. So, we've got 3 choices left. We know the name Abraham Lincoln. We might know the name Stephen Douglas because he had famous debates with Abraham Lincoln. They were both from Illinois. And we have no idea who William Lloyd Garrison was. So, I'm looking at this and I'm like, God, I don't know. I don't know who this guy is, so I'm not going to pick him. I've got Abraham Lincoln or Stephen Douglas. Kind of freedom, does that sound like something that Abraham Lincoln would say? Maybe. I don't know enough about what Stephen Douglas would say. So you probably end up going with Lincoln. And that would be wrong. Tell me, and we all know enough about Abraham Lincoln, when has Abraham Lincoln ever said anything that was harsh and really strong against the South? Remember, as president, he wanted to bring the country back together. See, we can outthink ourselves by making a bad choice because we picked a name that's familiar. The truth is, on this question, and we'll learn about this guy come chapter 14, or around thereabouts, is William Lloyd Garrison. He was a big supporter, northern white guy who had a newspaper that was a big supporter of the abolition of slavery. Okay, so this has been going on for a while. If you want to try the other questions on here, we can. I'm not going to go over any more because I didn't think this would go on for a half hour. But, hey, you just get me talking, man, and I just keep going. So if you want to take a look at those real quick, this one's pretty easy. Supreme Court decision, Brown v. Board of Education, essentially reversed which of the following earlier court decisions. All famous court decisions, probably the one that is most noteworthy in your mind is either Marbury v. Madison or Roe v. Wade. Okay, hopefully we all know what Roe v. Wade's about. We can eliminate that. Marbury versus Madison, oh, that sounds pretty important. Okay, but really, this one's easy. PVF. All right. So let's take a look at this one, because this one might just appear on your test. So this will be the last one, then we'll be done for today. The Stamp Act crisis was important of the coming American Revolution for all the following reasons except: colonists demonstrated their willingness to use violence rather than legal means to frustrate British policy. The crisis coincided with British decision to garrison regular troops in American cities. American patriots realized that British inflexibility made the revolution virtually inevitable. British maintained that the colonists had no right to independence from parliamentary authority. Patriot leaders claimed their act denied them their birthrights. Okay, so the Stamp Act crisis. So early on in the build up to the revolution was important for the coming revolution because for all the following reasons except did it demonstrate, so what can we eliminate here? Okay, you got to be careful with these except questions too. You got to make sure that you're picking it the right way. So did the Stamp Act crisis coincide with British decision to garrison or keep troops in American cities? Yes, we talked about that in class, so that can't be the answer. American patriots realized British inflexibility made the revolution inevitable. Did the Stamp Act help them for that realization? Yes, so that's not the answer either. The British maintained that the colonists had no right to independence from parliamentary authority, virtual, actual representation, etc., etc. Can we eliminate that one, everyone? Yes, we'll do that. So that leaves us two choices. We've greatly increased the likelihood of getting it right. The colonists demonstrated their willingness to use violence rather than legal means to frustrate British policy. Patriot leaders claim that the act denied them their birthrights. How many say A? How many say E? Correct answer here is E. Patriot leaders claim the act denied them their birthrights. Basically, birthright is what you feel entitled to, British citizenship, things like that, because of your background, right? Our birthright is to be an American citizen, okay? Patriot leaders never made any claims that they were denied the right to be a British citizen. In fact, just the opposite is true. They want representation because they are British citizens. You understand? Okay, so good stuff there. This has gone on long enough. I'm going to bang through this really quick because that's actually not relevant yet.